Today I want to do something different with you guys. Today I want to dream. I want to dream up the perfect documentary zoom lens. Because yes, the perfect documentary lens is a zoom lens. Fight me. So let's get into it. I've got here 4 lenses that I think pave the way for the perfect documentary zoom lens. We've got the Sony 18 to 110 f4 optical stabilization. This is fully autofocus and manually focusing just at a pull of this lever. You get hard stops with your focusing, and then you switch it and you've got full autofocus again. Then we have this awesome little lens. This is the Sony 16 to 55 f2.8. And this thing is a beast. Honestly, this is really cool lens. And I think I'm actually going to get this lens. Unless if someone after this video releases this perfect lens in a week's time, I'm going to get this one. Then over here we have the Canon 24 to 70 f2.8. That is a full frame lens with a speed booster on the back of it so that it can compress the image for a Super 35 sensor, which means that f2.8 becomes an f2. So this is a really good setup. If you don't mind losing autofocus, this is really great because for low light capability, this has got you covered. But so does this one. This is the Sigma 18 to 35 f1.8. That is cool. That is really good low light. And with the Sigma MC11 adapter on the back of there, you get really good autofocus with this lens. So all of these together, I think we can pull off the perfect zoom lens. So I'm going to tell you some specs. I believe that the perfect focal range for me is about a 24 to 85 full frame. But as a Super 35 shooter, I want a 16 to 55 millimeter, which, if you were paying attention, is what we have right here. This is the Sony 16 to 55 f2.8. And I'm pretty keen to get this lens for myself. But it is f2.8, which is pretty good, don't get me wrong, but look at the size of it, especially compared to this one. Okay, this one's got the sun hood on it, but look at the size difference. There's room for improvement here. We can work some magic with this, I promise you. And if you consider that this is a very similar focal range, the 24 to 70, but with a speed booster on it, it becomes an f2. So essentially, this is the perfect lens. 24 to 70, that's exactly the focal range that I want for my Super 35 camera. And I keep looking down over here because here is my Sony. Let's put that out of the shot a bit, okay? So I really want a 24 to 70 full frame equivalent for my Super 35. And with the speed booster, it gives me a really good low light performance with that f2 aperture. Which is just epic. So really this is the perfect setup. But the only problem is with the speed booster on the back here, you lose autofocus capabilities. I think some cameras, they still work, but it's hunting a lot. It doesn't look good. But with my Sony camera, say goodbye to autofocus. This is non-existent. So yeah, I'm looking for a focal range of 16 to 55 f2. Those are my main specs. If you make that happen with autofocus, that's awesome. I want it. Count me in. Take my money. Now, some extra specs that I would love. And that's why I've got this lens here, because this has got it all. We've got full autofocus and manual focus. So here, you can see it's got hard stops with the focus ring. But if we switch it over, by just pulling it out like that, you get full autofocus. Turn it back, hard stops. That is great. I love that. And I would love the focus throw to be about 180 degrees. So that just means how much the ring turns to go from infinity focus to close focus. And on this lens, I believe, so if we take this reference point here, that is just under 180 degrees. So that's like 150 degrees, which I think is great because those longer focus throws that go all the way around just takes forever to pull focus from one object to the next. So I like it to be quick, but I also don't like it to be 60 degrees like my Sigma 18-35. So the focus distance here is really quick, which I've gotten used to, and it can work and I don't mind it too much. But if you make one small mistake, it goes way out of focus. So I like to have a little bit of leniency there. The internal power zoom I think is completely overkill. I would prefer that for this perfect documentary lens that we're dreaming of today, I would prefer that they put the power zoom as an external module, like the Canon RF 24-105 f2.8. Also a really epic lens and serves as great inspiration for this entire video. But they've got a module that just adds on to the side of the lens, and then you've got power zoom. But then you can just take it off when you don't want the power zoom, if you just want to zoom like a normal person. The reason why I don't want this to be internal is because you get a really weird noise on the zoom ring, and the zoom is very slow. So even if you zoom really quickly, it's got a delay, so it will only zoom. Okay, hang on. I'm just going to stop myself right there. Unfortunately, that's actually not true. I discovered this after filming this video. I did some more testing with this lens, and I discovered that it's actually got a switch on the underside of the lens, which allows you to change from manual zooming to servo zooming. So that just turns off the motor so that the lens is completely quiet when you use it. So yeah, if I had tested out with the lens a little bit more, I would have known this and I would have been able to tell you guys. But yeah, so I actually think that power zoom internally like this can actually be very useful if you can turn it on and off like you can on this lens. And this is actually a great segue into the sponsor for today's video, and that is Maloney Amsterdam. Maloney Amsterdam is a camera gear rental company that rents out gear for high-level Hollywood productions all the way down to beginner videographers just getting started. They've got gear for everyone. I personally love using camera gear rental companies like Maloney Amsterdam to test out gear before I invest in it. So I can either test it out in their location, or I can rent it for a fraction of the price of purchasing it and really get to know, is this the right gear for me? So if you're in the Netherlands and you want to rent out gear for a shoot or just to test it out, you can make a booking at maloney.amsterdam. I'll leave a link in the description. All right, let's get back to it. The iris ring on the lens feels a little bit unnecessary for me. If we've got all these other electronic features like optical stabilization, autofocus, the iris ring, I can do without that. That's fine. I would like the minimum focusing to be 30 centimeters, which is the case for the Sigma 18-35 and the Sony 16-55. These both focus at about 30 centimeters, whereas these two, the Canon 24-70 and the 18-110, focus at about 40 centimeters, which is okay, but the closer the better. Just gives you that little bit of extra versatility. Okay, and then some other specs I would love to include in this lens is parfocal. That just means that when I'm focused on something and zoomed all the way out, I can zoom in and not lose focus. A lot of lenses, especially photo lenses, when you're fully zoomed in or fully zoomed out and you're in focus, and you zoom out, you're going to lose focus. Unless if you've got a really good autofocus that can keep it up, then yeah, you're going to lose focus. And I don't want that. I like to be able to zoom in and out and keep the focus, which is the case for these two lenses. Surprisingly, this is parfocal. It's like 99% parfocal. You'll see, I'll show some example footage right now. When you zoom in, you lose focus only a tiny bit. And in a documentary scenario, you're not going to notice that. And with the powerful autofocus of this lens, you definitely won't notice it. It will just stay sharp throughout the entire zoom range, which is exactly what I want. No focus breathing. That just means that when you focus from one subject to the next, you're not going to get like that zooming effect. If you look right to the edges of the image, you can see that there's a slight zoom in. Next, I want silent autofocus. With the Canon 24-70, especially these older EF lenses, the autofocus was a bit noisy. And with my Sigma 18-35, you do hear the autofocus. But with the Sony lenses, there's nothing. You hear absolutely nothing. And there is some magical technology going into that I don't fully understand. But that's great. I want more of that. The silent zoom ring, I've already mentioned. 2 function buttons, or even just one. So we've got one here on the Sony 16-55. And the way I use this is I have my camera in autofocus or manual focus, and just by pressing this button, it switches over to the other. So it's either in continual autofocus and then I press it and then it's in manual focus, so then I can pull focus myself, or it's in manual focus and then I can press this button and now it's autofocuses. So depending on what scenario I'm in, I quite like to be able to change my focus mode like that for very quick, easy adjustments. I'm not bothering with the LCD screen on the back. And now I understand that, you know, trying to pack all these features that we've just talked about into a tiny little camera body lens like this is not possible. So it is going to be heavier and it's going to be bigger and more expensive and all of that. But honestly, doesn't this sound like the perfect lens? I think it does. I would be willing to make those sacrifices. And to be honest, this is 500 grams. This is 1,100, so this is 1.1 kilos. It's not that much. It's definitely heavier, but this is doable. On my camera body, I reckon I can manage this. Look at that. I mean, and doesn't that just look epic as well? So if they make a lens that is a bit bigger and heavier, I don't mind. If it's about 1 kilo and I don't know how long this is, but as long as this, with all of those lovely features, yeah, I think the lens would be bigger and would definitely be worth it. All right, guys, so that's it for me today. I hope you've enjoyed this little dream lens session. Next video, I'm going to be reviewing the Sony 16-55. I really love this lens for a lot of reasons. I've already spoken about it today a bit, but I'm going to go into full depth about it in the next video.